I really hope. Can someone check if it's on YouTube? Thank you. We are live at Siftach. Hopefully, we're on YouTube too. For Coffee and Kabbalah Parshat Ki Tavo. I'm so excited to be joined here by all of these amazing women and even some new faces. Welcome. And today's shiur is sponsored by our dear friend Rachel Kessler in memory of her dear departed mother, whose yard site is on Tesvav Elo. Her neshama should have an aliyah. Her name is Esther Rivka Bas Yoel, and Rachel Pearl, and her neshama should have a lot of aliyahs from this shiur. Thank you so much for sponsoring. Okay, so whoever is new to the shiur or old, so the way we do the shiur is, or the way the shiur goes is, we a little bit summarize the parsha, and then we like to uncover some deep messages that we can live with in our day-to-day life that are relevant for everyone's, hopefully, day-to-day life, and make it real, make it relatable. So Parshat Ki Tavo, where are we holding? We are finishing the fifth book. Thank you so much, Rachel. We're finishing the fifth book of Devarim, finishing Devarim, the fifth book of the Torah, and we are coming off of Ki Seitzei. We have a couple parshios left, soon as Rosh Hashanah, and we're going to, on Sukkot, we're going to begin from Simchas Torah, the whole Torah again. So where Ki Tavo is actually less, it's a parsha that includes, it's one of the two parshios in the Torah that include the tochachos. Tochachos mean the rebuke. So it's a heavier parsha. Later on in the parsha, it says, if all the blessings that will come if we fulfill all the commandments of Hashem, yay, and all of the curses that will come if we don't fulfill the commandments of Hashem. We're going to talk about the name of the parsha as well, because we often focus in the shiur on the name of the parsha, because in Chassidut especially, we learn that the name of something tells you about its essence, just like on our person's name is connected to their essence. And we see this specifically in the word neshama, that neshama is our essence, and the core of the word neshama is shame. So the core of a neshama is its shame. So you can tell something's essence by looking at the name of it. So in the parshios, sometimes it seems very unmeaning, not so meaningful. The name of the parsha seems very random. Then the parshios were actually chosen. The names of the parshios were that it was usually picked from almost always picked from the first pasuk in the parsha, and it's like the most, the first word that sticks out. So it seems to be random, but in Chassidut we learned that the name of the parsha tells us a lot about the essence of the week that we're going through and the essence of the entire parsha. So Ki Tavo seems very random, right? It's not the main point of the parsha of the pasuk. The pasuk actually tells us Moshe is telling the Jewish people, right? The whole Devarim is Moshe talking to the Jewish people, and what's he saying? Ki Tavo right? For you for an eternal heritage, and you settle it. So when you enter the land and then you settle it and you cultivate it, what should you do? He now presents the mitzvah of bikurim. What is mitzvah bikurim? Giving the truma bikurim, giving the first ripened fruits, the bikurim of your orchard, to the Beis HaMikdash and declaring your gratitude. And then the entire nusach of how the bikurim went. There's a lot of psukim dedicated to it. There's a whole nusach. You go picking in your orchard. You make a basket, literally a tena, a basket. They would weave these beautiful baskets, bring it to the Beis HaMikdash, bring it to the Kohen, and display a whole bunch of gratitude to Hashem and for everything Hashem has done for us, for me individually, for us as a people. That is this beautiful mitzvah of bikurim. So it would seem more appropriate maybe to name the parsha of bikurim, right? The first of your fruit. Ki Tavo is just a very small detail. It seems like when you land, where? El Haaretz. Maybe call it El Haaretz, the land, right? Why when you come? Ki Tavo, when you arrive. So we have to learn something very deep. We actually learned so many life messages just from the words Ki Tavo, believe it or not. I'm just calling back. Okay. Parsha continues and includes the halachos of the maasros that are given to the Leviim, and maaser that's given to the poor, the tenth of our earnings. And the detailed instructions on how to make the brachos. And then there's the brachos and curses on Har Grizim and Har Avel that are discussed at the beginning of Parsha A. Moshe is now reminding us these blessings and these curses. And the end of, so that's the brachos, and at the end is the tochacha, the rebuke. Should we abandon Hashem's commandments? And Moshe concludes this parsha by telling everyone that only today, 40 years after our birth as a nation, after we received the Torah, have we now attained the level of a heart to know, lev lada'at, eyes to see, right? Einayim liros, and ears to hear, and those nine that hear. That's a very profound statement. So let us dive right in. What is this? What's the Ki Tavo part of the mitzvah bikurim. So there's actually a discussion, a disagreement among Sifri and the Chachamim and Rashi that discuss when are you obligated to bring bikurim, right? Are you obligated to bring bikurim the moment that you plant your own orchard, or is it only after all of Eretz Yisrael has been settled and conquered? When is this obligation of bikurim, right? It would seem Sifri takes a logical approach that you plant your orchard, you've entered the land, and now that you've entered the land, you can now bring the mitzvah bikurim to the base of Mikdash, to the Mishkan, wherever there was at the time. But Rashi holds a different approach, and you'll look inside Rashi, and he says, let me pick up the source. So we can look at this in our sources. Kabbalah Ki Tavo al Aretz. This is the very first pasuk in the Torah. Asher Hashem lokecha nosein lecha lenachla levirisha v'yashavta bo. And virisha, you inherit it, and you possess it, and you settle in it. Right? Rashi says, Magid, what do you mean Ki Tavo v'yirisha v'yashavta? What's that coming to teach us? These extra words to specify that they weren't obligated in bikurim until they fully conquered the entire land and settled it, which is way later than some people, which took a very long time, exactly, because initially the women were living somewhere, already planting food to eat. Later, it took many, many years for the settling, 7 years for the settling and conquering of the land and the division of the land properly. But until then, they were still already planting and growing and picking food, and you would think that they would be obligated to bikurim before, but the pasuk, as Rashi is saying, the pasuk is adding these words, to clarify that you're not obligated to bikurim until the entire Eretz Yisrael has been settled, conquered, divided, and everyone has received their portion. Only now does bikurim become an obligation. So this teaches us something extremely profound about when have you entered a space, right? That's really the theme of this week's class. When have you entered somewhere? Because there's so many, you could say, I've gotten there, right? We all have very different ideas. I'm here, right? You know, who texts somebody, I'm here, when you're not even like, when you're, I'm outside, right? When someone knows I'm really late, they're like, I'm here. And I'm like, I don't see you. I'm like, Tati's outside. And they're like, I don't see him. I'm like, he's here. He's coming in a second, right? So it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very, the word saying you're here or you've arrived somewhere is very what? Subjective. It's very subjective. Yeah, it's not always the same. It's not black and white. It's not clear cut. It's a very gray area when you come somewhere, right? Do I live here? Am I here? Where am I really? Being somewhere doesn't. It's a very subjective experience, and it's not the same for everybody. And there could be two people somewhere, and someone feels like they're there, and someone is there but not there at all. So arriving somewhere is something we're gonna.
Be at a place and they're really not
exactly. So the message of the words Ki Tavo, when you arrive, it's teaching us such a profound message, because it's saying when you arrive, not when you physically step over the threshold and you're in Eretz Yisrael. When you arrive, what does it mean to arrive? What does it mean to be in Eretz Yisrael? How long does that take? You can land, and I said it so nicely with New Allah here, because all of us are made aliyah, I think, here at some point in our lives, and it takes so long for somebody to say, you know, I'm here, I live here, I'm settled, I feel like I'm fully here. I know somebody who was here for 8 years, and she said she still has 1 foot back in wherever she lived, the city she lived in America. She's half here, half like still owns her house there, didn't sell it because she's still not settled. She still doesn't know if she's gonna stay here or she's gonna go back there, right? And there can also be somebody who is not, you know, who doesn't live here, but they're still connected here. And one of the examples in the Torah is Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef, one of the reasons that his bones were buried in Eretz Yisrael and not Moshe Rabbeinu's, is that Moshe said, at least bury me there, is because Yosef, even when he was in Egypt, and even when it was at risk for him, everyone called him the Ivri, which means he's from the other side of the Arden. He was in Egypt for most of his life. He only spent 17 years of his life in Eretz Yisrael, in our land, and most of his life was in Egypt. Yet he was always called the Ivri, that Israeli, because he was Israel. He belonged there, even though physically he wasn't there. That's where he was in his heart. That's where he belonged. That's where he felt he belonged. And so, because he was always making sure that everyone knew that I am an Ivri and I belong there, that's why his bones ultimately were merited to return to Eretz Yisrael, despite a lot of blockages of English and so conflicts, or yeah. So we see that even entering Eretz Yisrael, there's a lot of stages to fully being here with Ki Tavo, when you've arrived, right? When you've gotten it, when you've settled in, when you're fully there. So that's why the pasuk says V'yirishta, and you've inherited it, V'yeshavta, and you've settled, and you've divided, and you've conquered the land. And I always say that making aliyah every time, not just the Jewish people originally got Eretz Yisrael had to conquer the land. Everyone who moves to Eretz Yisrael has to conquer it. We don't fight the Plishtim, but we fight a lot of other battles to conquer it, to fully be here. I know, and we're still in the battle. We're here 5.5 years. It's getting easier, but we're still battling. There's so many battles to live in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is niknes v'yasurim. Eretz Yisrael is is acquired and conquered. So that's why it takes a lot of pushing. So anyone who stayed here, it means that they've conquered a lot and they've overcome a lot of adversity. That's the word I was looking for. A lot of adversity to remain here, to stay here till they can live here. We have to, the language barrier, the government, the bureaucracy, right? The culture, the mentality, the physical difference, just so many changes and differences trying to battle. But each person has their struggles of parnasa. There's so many leaving your family. There's a lot of battles we need to fight to fully acquire Eretz Yisrael, right? To find your land, to find your space, and to settle here, and to be able to say, I am here, I'm fully here, I'm not halfway there. There's nothing part of me that's ever thinking about going back. Not even that thinking about going back. There's no part of me that's, not sure if I could stay here, because there's always, for me, even, there's always like, I need to have like, like if it doesn't work out, like where will I go, right? Because it's so difficult. It's like, what if Eretz Yisrael, spits me out, right? So conquering Eretz Yisrael is something that everyone has to go through when they make Aliyah. Until they could conquer Eretz Yisrael. And I think it's a constant battle. There's a lot of battling things to stay here, right? Just Jews who live here, even who are born here, are battling the nations who want to fight us out. Even someone who grew up here and had.
Sorry, that's okay. It's only water.
Oh,
that's all right.
Sorry.
So excited. No problem.
Yeah. So even someone who lives here has to battle, right? You have to battle all of the nations surrounding us who are trying to remove us to stay in our land, to stay here. Yeah.
That when we've been in it. I've been in Israel this month for the be 42 years.
Wow.
We went back to stay for 4 years, and that's in the 90s. And we were coming back in 95. And we lived in whatever. We didn't like it. And when we were coming back, people were saying, "But why are you going back to Eretz Yisrael? Like why?"
Yeah.
Why?
I understand.
And we're like, "Cause that's where we belong." They looked at us with this face, like the whole group. We had a going away party for my husband, and where he was working, and they gave him this look like, I don't understand, like what? You're sleeping with 4 kids. I was pregnant with my 5th, and like what? And,
Wow. Yeah, if you know, 100%. Okay, so when does Bikurim begin? So halachically, Bikurim only begins, the Gemara concludes, after the full settling, conquering the land. Now, this idea of being somewhere but not fully being there has a lot of other applications in Judaism, and I'll give you a couple. One of them, again, we're focusing on the words Ki Tavo. When have you actually entered a space, right? When have you come? Entering, there's another halacha in Baba Basra, in Gemara Baba Basra, that discusses that a person who enters a house or a tent in those days, or a hut with a dead body, with a corpse, becomes tameh. Now, what if they 1 foot entered? What if they stuck their head in the room? Are they tameh? And these are serious halachic questions. So the Gemara actually says that if a person stuck his whole body, but his pinky was not in, right? Only if his entire body was in the tent is he tameh. Because to be somewhere, to have entered a tent, because the word is kitavo, when you enter the tent, when you're not there, if you're not fully there. So the word kitavo is very, very interesting. It teaches us so much about really being somewhere. We see this also by mikvah. It says that when something is impure and it dunks in the mikvah, it becomes pure again. It uses the word kitava when it comes into the water. Also there, the halacha is that if it's not fully submerged at the same time, and this halacha extends to men dipping in the mikvah and women dipping in the mikvah and utensils, it is not considered submerged. I actually am a mikvah attendant, and our entire job is actually not to inspect women. It's not supposed to be that. It's not to check them or ask them questions. Our job is to make sure that they're fully submerged, because that actually is halachic, just to check from a distance that the entire body is submerged, because so often fingers and hair stick out. But if anyone could really check and make sure, because that is such an integral part of the mitzvah, because when the Torah says that in entering the water is a prerequisite to being tahor, entering means it's fully there. That if one hair is not in the water, it's not, the whole thing is considered as if it wasn't there.
And then you say kosher.
I changed it to my friend some Balinese say kosher. Recently I started saying tahora, because it's more feminine and it's less of a passing judgment, like you are kosher, and it's more about letting you know if you're tahor. I asked my rabbi, because some people were giving me some like, are you sure that's okay? My rabbi said yeah, because it says in the halacha, the Shulchan Aruch, kosher v'kadoma, and like, so that's where my source is. If you can tell me otherwise, if you teach me otherwise, I'll listen. But I just think it's more in line with the feminine mitzvah. That you're saying you're tahor, right? We're just letting you know whether you're tahor or not. So again, that's more. So we have these applications of ki tavo that we keep seeing through the Torah. That even though somebody will say, "Well, I'm in the water," well, you're not, because one hair of you is not. So you're not actually in it, right? So this is all based on a very powerful sikha of the Rebbe about coming deeper and deeper into a space, about what it means to enter a space, what it means to be somewhere. And the Rebbe gives examples of a relationship. Like we said, there's so many times when we're sitting across from somebody, well, I've experienced being with a friend, or I could be that friend, that we're sitting and having coffee, but my phone is either with me and I'm checking it, or it's in my pocket. So even though I'm not checking my phone, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like waiting for that phone call, or I'm checking it. So and that we can see so often that physically now more in our lives, we understand this concept of when somebody is fully physically there, but they're not there at all. So even though someone has entered Eretz Yisrael, they're not there and Ki Tavo until they feel settled in it, until they're there, right?
Not rudely, but I say, are you present for this conversation?
Yeah.
And I look at them,
Yeah.
And I say, can you please put your phone away?
Yeah.
In a kind way.
So I'll give you a few examples of how we like combat that. My father-in-law is a principal of a school, and he taught us this message. And he said he was Bryna's principal when she was her children's principal. And
mine also.
Oh my gosh, and you're a principal. That's right. He's a very successful principal of the school, and he's the way pre-phone era. But one thing that he understood from being an educator of a very successful school is that when you're meeting with somebody, not only is it affect your person's feeling that you're present if your phone is in your hand or in your pocket, but if it's even within reach. So as long as your phone is within reach, you're not able to be 100% committed and present. If you know that someone could call you and you can reach your phone. So he doesn't have it. First of all, even if you are fully not thinking about your phone, but it's there on the table and you could see it, it already takes half of the presence away. So you can't see the phone can't be seeable. So before a meeting, somebody has the phone out of reach. And I've learned to do that, or try to do that as much as possible, not to have the phone within arm's reach, not to have it on, and not for the person not to see it, because seeing the phone is a message. If I'm talking to you and your phone is in front of you, I already feel like I only have 1/3 of you at best, right? There's another rule that became like a trend amongst like millennials, and when you go to a restaurant with a bunch of friends, you have all your phones in a pile in the middle of the table, and whoever picks up their phone first pays for the bill. That's a really good rule to make sure. It's almost impossible, right? But I think it's so healthy. Like we have a no phone rule for going out with friends. It just ruins the whole thing for everybody. So phones, we see like now, before the phone era, this was obviously understood, because so often you have that picture of like the kid, trying to get his parents' attention, his parents there, but he's like doing something else. But before you had a phone in your hand, it was like, you had enough ways to be distracted. But now it's almost impossible not to be fully present. So I think that this timeless message of this Torah of Ki Tavo, of being able to be somewhere physically, but not actually be there fully at all, and you're not even considered there. You're not considered Ki Tavo until you're 100% settled, conquered, divided. Here, it's such a timeless message. I think now even way more than, for me at least, it feels more timeless and more applicable now than even thousands of years ago. And this is the Torah's like infinite wisdom and saying like, Ki Tavo, when have you entered? When are you there? So the Rebbe actually says that just like with another person, we see so many levels of when they're there, when they're with you in the room, and when they're not actually there. We see this with our relationship with Hashem as well. I'll give you one more example. My sister taught me this lifelong message, is like that she said that in a marriage as well. So we see it with our children, with our friends, when we're spending time with them, when you're having a meeting with somebody, when you want to make someone feel seen, having the phone or having yourself anywhere else, but especially the phone being that distraction in a marriage. When somebody, my sister's rule is that the phone has no place in the marital bedroom. Like it should be like the number one, like big rule. There should be like like every time someone has a phone in the bedroom, they have to like put $5 in like a jar, right, to the other person's travel fund or whatever it is, right? It should be such a rule that like just from the beginning of your marriage, the phone doesn't have a space in the bedroom, because the message that is that a bedroom is your space for the two of you to connect, for a couple, for a husband and wife, for a couple to have their time. That's their own space. And when a husband or wife walk into a room and the spouse is looking at their phone, the message that they're receiving is that like, I'm not with you, that this is our space, but I'm not here with you and I'm somewhere else. And it completely takes away the only place. So I'm not saying that I don't do it at all. I'm just saying that I'm not for it. And my ideals are that it's not my values. I'm not saying you should condemn and say, see, my Rebbe said, and you're a bad person. I'm saying that maybe set up some sort of like fun system, like where there's like accountability system where you have to pay, or like, some hours, off limit hours, start with like from 5 p.m. and on, from when the kids go to bed and on, from 8 p.m. right? There's no phone in the bedroom. There's no charging the phone, taking the chargers out of the bedroom so that if it dies, it dies. Start some sort of accountability system, or like start small with some rules, with some accountability. And again, this is no way to come and say like my Rebbe said, you're the worst person ever, you're not present, you're the worst spouse, right? Definitely that's not what I'm saying, because we it's very big battle. It's very hard thing to win because their phones are designed to pull our attention away. So no one's at fault for doing it. I'm at fault. No one's a bad person for, for being human. But again, it's such a powerful way to add and invest in our relationship. And that ties us into Elul. So the Rebbe says that just like in relationship with another person, we have so many levels of being there in our relationship with Hashem as well. You can have a frum Jew who the whole year is like, yeah, I'm a frum Jew. I do all the mitzvahs for as much as I could. I do Shabbos kosher. I do more than my neighbors. But Ki Tavo and Elul is about entering the relationship with Hashem. What do you mean? I am in a relationship with Hashem. How do I enter it? Because you can be in a relationship with somebody, but have to re-enter it. So Elul, the entire message of Elul to me is Ki Tavo. It's re-entering this relationship with Hashem. That even though you might be in it, to really be in it. To re-enter the space, because we might be in a relationship with Hashem, but we're so distracted with the day-to-day life, right? And we're so distracted with so many of the pulls and distractions of the world that we live in, of the home, of our feelings, of so many things that we could come to Elul, and without even realizing it, we're in a relationship, but we're not even mindful. We're like on autopilot. We're just doing a checklist of things that I just do by route, and I'm not even in this relationship. It's like when a couple wakes up and they're we're basically just roommates, just doing things. Oh, it's our anniversary, let's go out to dinner. But are we really in this relationship? Do we know each other? Am I fully here? Am I here with my heart? Is my heart here? Am I just working on autopilot? And so Elul is our time that Hashem gives us this gift and says I'm giving you an entire month, right? Kids are in school. You don't have anyone to cook for, Chagim, nothing, just an entire month to date one another, to re-enter this space, of mindfulness, of being present in our heart. It's not about doing more things as a checklist and by route. It's not about doing a bunch of things. That's how we do it all year. It's not about the externals of being there. It's about the internals of being there. It's about making a cheshbon nefesh. And someone once asked, well, what do I work on my relationship with Elul? And I said, that's the point is that it's so individual that the same way someone say, well, give me your best marriage advice from your marriage, right? It might be really bad for you because my marriage is every marriage is so individual. So similarly, hopefully everyone's in a relationship with Hashem, even though there's one set of mitzvahs, hopefully each person's relationship with Hashem is so individual and so unique and so different that I can't give you any advice. The only thing that we know is that Elul is about making a cheshbon nefesh, which means personal accounting. The same way I would come to my relationship and sit down and go through and say, well, no, let's go through and divide up our relationship into different parts, where we're strongest, where do we feel like our relationship is strongest, where have we grown, and in what ways have we grown apart, in what way do we want, what are our goals, in what ways we want to grow closer, in what ways we want to work on, how can we work on those things. Just like that, it's so different, right? Every relationship might some people might have a stronger physical relationship with their spouse, but emotionally they're not talking as much. Some people might go on dates all the time, right? But they're not necessarily being intimate, having a more intimate romantic relationship. Some people will want to increase the romance. They're so unique and so individual. So similar, just like I encourage everybody to re-enter their marriage and re-enter that relationship. And I hope everyone, finds that time and hopefully learns from this Elul idea and takes that into their marriage as well, or their relationship, or their new relationship, to hopefully re-enter that and create a space where we can say that just because we're together all day doesn't mean that we're together at all. We could be in the same space in the same house, but we could be strangers, right? Strangers like one another. So it actually says that there's the greatest distance, greatest between two people. You would think is two people on the opposite side of the world, right? The theory of relativity comes into place here. That you think that two people who love each other, one's in Hawaii and one's in Israel, and they miss each other. There's such a great distance because you feel that distance. But the truth is that I heard this from, I want to say the Kutzker, but it's probably I don't even know if it's somebody Jewish. Is that the greatest distance between two people is lovers laying in bed together with their backs to one another, not speaking, right? When two lovers are in the same space but they're not talking to one another and their backs, that's even greater than two lovers on the opposite side of the world, because that space, that distance is felt so tangibly, so great. So just being in the space of somebody is not even close enough. No, we're not taking over. Come on in. It's just a sure. Sorry. Nope, sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I should have taken this spot.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry.
So the idea of Elul is bridging that space, is re-entering that space, not physically, not saying, okay, here's another checklist, I'll do these mitzvahs and then I won't get punished, right? Again, we spoke last year, tune into 2 weeks ago to Elul share about, and Elul is kind of ending that checklist relationship with Hashem, or that fear-based relationship with Hashem, that we just do it because we want Hashem to punish us and give us a bad year, and ending that relationship and starting a new one that's individual, that's me as I am, and having an honest relationship, starting from scratch, having that honesty, that openness, that love, exploring that loving relationship with Hashem, that Hashem is my lover who loves me, doesn't want to punish me, wants to give me, is at the very least, my father, who just a good father who wants to bless, wants to give me all the goodness that he can, right? And for me to at least start with there and entering into a loving relationship, what I have to be grateful for. So that's more on that. And if you want to, I could link that share below. But now we're taking it even further and just connecting it to the idea of Ki Tavo, and let me now move on to another concept of Ki Tavo. And Ki Tavo comes right after Ki Seitze, right? So we have two keys, right? We always know, like, where are we up to? Ki Seitze, Ki Tavo. Chassidus teaches us also another beautiful teaching. Ki Seitze on the combination of these two parshios, that Ki Seitze, where in Chassidus is the journey of the neshama leaving. Where does the neshama go? The neshama leaves from her comfortable heavenly space where she's embasked in holiness, engulfed in God, and leaves that and to enter our world, into our body, to enter our physical body in a physical world. And that's that painful journey of that. We also had that in Parshas Vayetze as well. But here we have Ki Seitze, the neshama leaving the comforts, which reflects every time we have to leave that our space of comfort and enter into discomfort, pushing ourselves beyond our boundaries, entering into uncomfortable territory. And after the Ki Seitze, the neshama going down into this world and investing herself in the physical body, we then have that like paralleled with Ki Tavo. That comes in like partnership with Ki Tavo, which means coming back. The neshama leaves from above, Ki Seitze leaves her heavenly space, goes into a body, and then Ki Tavo, now it's her time to re-enter that space. So we have this constant flow. And if you learn the Kabbalah on a deeper level in Chassidus and Tanya, you actually realize that the entire flow of life is that energy of leaving and coming, of Ratzoi. In Kabbalah, the terminology for it is called Ratzoi and Shuv. Ratzoi is longing, it's distance, it's leaving, it's like cleaving, wanting to cleave to spirituality, yearning for something greater. And Shuv is returning back to the present. It's coming back to, well, there's a day-to-day life. What do I have to do in the day-to-day? We have this constant fluctuation of like wanting to aspire to spiritual heights. And Shuv is saying, well, what do I need to do right now? What's my day-to-day? What's my present life need for me? What is meaningful in the day-to-day moments? And that actually reflects the heartbeat. And we say without those two factors of Ki Seitze and Ki Tavo, of leaving to go, Ki Seitze would actually be the Shuv. It's like coming down to the physical world, doing the physical things, and then Ki Tavo returning back to spirituality, coming back and forth. And without that fluctuation, there's no life, because we look at a heartbeat, a heartbeat that's always the same. If somebody is always either in spirituality, then that would be like a constant heartbeat that would probably be a heart attack on the monitor. I'm not a nurse, but if anyone here, right, you're a nurse, Rafael. Yeah. And if somebody's a flatline and is always Shuv, is always down, that would also be would be dead. So that would be the opposite of life. So we need that constant like up and down, which seems chaotic at times, but that is what the fabric of life is, right? Every muscle contracts and expands. So the expansion is the Ratzoi, the yearning for more, and then the Shuv is coming back down to the physical reality of the world that we live in. So that's a very deep concept that I have an entire shir on. Yeah, T. Barrett wanted to say. Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's the pasuk again? Right, there's a lot in shir about chasing Achtarecha Narutza, right? Chavieni Melech Hadarav, right? We have that like chasing Hashem and coming back down into the present moment. So why am I even saying that? Oh, we were speaking about Ki Seitze and Ki Tavo, about the parallel of this idea of Ki Tavo. I actually connecting this to Hayom Yom, a daily Chassidic teaching, where it says that Hashem created the world something from nothing, right? Hashem took from Ayin and made Yesh Me'ayin, and our job is to take, that's like the coming down, taking from spirituality, Ki Seitze, and bringing it down into a physical world. So you made a physical world from nothing. And then our job as Jews is to take that Yesh and turn it back into Ayin. So that's how I connected it in my mind. So we take the Yesh, and how do we do that? By using the physical world, now returning it back to a source of spirituality by using everything physical in the world for a holier purpose, by redeeming and revealing that spark of godliness. And that's really like the essence of what like our mission in the world is, according to Chassidut in a nutshell, right? We're here to elevate the world that Hashem took from nothingness, from holiness, and brought it down to physicality. And we're taking it back and elevating it back up to holiness, Ki Tavo, returning it by combining, by using the physicality and using the materialism and that we encounter for a higher purpose, for spirituality. So where we're doing that reversal. So like Ki Seitze and Ki Tavo, there's two bar mitzvah girls here. Oh, you're not. You're the big sister. Hi. Oh, hello. So my ADD, I can't. So that was just another idea. So we see, first of all, it's just so fascinating that the words Ki Tavo seems so side to me at the beginning, just seems so redundant, like not the integral part of the pasuk, Ki Tavo el haaretz, right? And now we already have so many teachings about being present, about mitzvahs, about halachos, about returning, about re-entering, about entering Elul. It's just amazing that from two words of Torah we can have so many deep life messages just from these two short words. So to me that was just like, wow, blew my mind.
Rabbi
Gordon?
Up to something loud.
Up to Rav? Who?
He's not all about it. Up to something ladder. And Mrs. Cohen and Scott translated
There's a book named Up the Ladder.
Up to something ladder.
Up the something ladder.
Never mind.
Beautiful. I love it. Dora, the artist. Dora, you should have led an art workshop today. If anyone else with ADD like me has a hard time just sitting and listening, tomorrow, could we borrow some pencils and scribble? That's the only way I could focus, if I could scribble. So anyone, if you need, raise your hand. Tomorrow we'll share the pencil out.
Yeah, I always wondered why that, like in many times in Chumash, is where Moshe Rabbeinu also says, I'm going to die. I'm no longer going to come out, go in and come out, or go out and come in.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that said a bunch of times?
Rachel pointed out that the concept of leaving and coming is a very, very common theme in the Torah. Like, Teischem, B'Balachem, like going out and coming in. It's true. Like, Smach, like, right. Wait,
I think that's still going coming out.
I actually saw it a bunch in this week's Parsha, a lot about like your goings and your comings. That in the curses and the blessings, it says that you'll be blessed in your comings and your goings. It's very interesting. And so that's a much deeper message. It's like, what does it mean comings and goings? Like every time you walk into a room, but it's much deeper. It's about when you could come somewhere. It's you're being blessed and being somewhere fully and being committed to something 100%. So we have this idea of being fully somewhere, of when have you entered a space, of realizing that you've only really considered being there if in so many areas of our lives, in our relationships, obviously, when you're physically there, but to be there, you have to be 100% only involved with the person that you're talking to, and as much as possible, removing all of the distractions and choosing to focus 100%, which is very difficult. We have it in our mitzvos, in being in Eretz Yisrael, and someone could be physically in the land, but they're not considered Ki Tavo until they've fully settled and allowed. Like I always say, it's not enough to enter Eretz Yisrael. You have to allow Eretz Yisrael to enter you as well. And if we're going to digress now and move to Aliyah, that a lot of people think that if I make Aliyah, I'm just going to it makes me more spiritual. Like I moved, and maybe people don't think that, but I think it's important to note and to let people, to make sure to clarify that moving to Eretz Yisrael is not enough. It doesn't make we're not automatically more elevated just by moving to Eretz Yisrael. It's a lot of work to align ourselves with the values of Eretz Yisrael, to fully allow Eretz Yisrael to enter us as well. Someone could be physically in Israel, but if they haven't allowed the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael to enter them, that Kedusha won't happen automatically. It's not like the Aliyah is something that you do. I think the Aliyah is like a verb. It's not just an automatic, you just take a plane here. Because a lot of people I know, unfortunately, they visit Eretz Yisrael, live here, and they say, I don't feel any different here. So it's really about piercing our heart, which is one of the themes of Elul. We have Elul being an acronym for 5 things. One of the things that Hashem says, it's like, I'll circumcise your heart, right? Mal Hashem, es levavcha, ve'es levav is et levavcha Elul. That Hashem will circumcise our heart. So we have to dive into Hashem to pierce. Sometimes we need to take a lot of avoda to pierce and peel back layers of our heart, to allow us to move those physical levels or those distractions aside, to allow the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael to enter us as well, to align ourselves with the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, to be in the mindset of a Kedusha, to be someone can live a very materialistic life in Eretz Yisrael as well. Even though we learn that being in Eretz Yisrael allows us to be closer to Kedusha. So it gives us an advantage by being closer, but then comes the real avoda of making this our home, of choosing to be. Shelly wants to add. Yeah. Et levavcha ve'et levav zaracha. The pasuk is in Devarim also, that it says that Hashem umal Hashem will circumcise es levavcha, your heart, ve'es levav, and the hearts of your children. Shelly.
I just wanted to share that sometimes you can feel it more when you go back to the States.
Yeah. The contrast, 100%. Yeah.
It is 100%.
Yeah.
Around the time of Halloween.
Yeah.
And I entered, and there was this witch. I felt like it had entered my soul, and I went, oh my God! But this was something that I had lived with.
I know.
It's true.
Oh my God! I can't look at this. I can't.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh. I think I live in Israel.
Yeah, I love that also. Like you forget, like you live here long enough. You live long enough when you forget the lyrics to all the Christmas songs. I don't know if that's ever gonna happen, right? Because it's so like integrated into your like. Yeah. And Israelis come to America and they're just like, "What's this song?" Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I'm kidding. I made that just a joke. But yeah. So I think that one of the messages of Ki Tavo El Haaretz is teaching us that It doesn't automatically happen that you're entering the land. Oh, I'm here now. I'm Kedusha. I'm higher. It's teaching us that it's only after you've conquered the land and you've settled the land and you've divided it, right? Only then does Bikurim apply, right? So it's teaching us that when we make Aliyah, it's not automatic, that there's going to be work involved, that there's going to be avoda, a lot of inner avoda to raise ourselves to the level of the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, right? We took upon ourselves, or my husband made us take upon ourselves, that we're going to stop watching movies after we move here, because we need to be on a holier level, a holier vessel to receive the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, right? So it's making it's the avoda that we have to do, and we have to do the conquering, and then we enter Eretz Yisrael. So we said it involves this idea of Ki Tavo, of entering a space with Eretz Yisrael, with our relationships, even with the mitzvos. One more mitzvah I didn't mention is that the Gemara, I started to mention it, I got distracted, that the Gemara in Bava Basra speaks about giving tzedakah to a poor person, that if a person gives tzedakah to a poor person, it says he receives sixfold brachos, blessing. But if he gratifies him, he receives 11-fold brachos. And the Gemara clarifies that it doesn't mean that you gratify him, like you give him more tzedakah, that you receive 11-fold blessing. It means that you do the same amount of tzedakah. So if you give a poor person a $5 bill, or 1 ruble, or 5 rubles, and then you give him the same one, but you gratify him, that you make him, the way you do it is that you're not just walking past and you throw it at him, that you're involved in the mitzvah, that you look at him in the eye and you say, here, I wish you a lot of slacha, or even greater, you say, thank you so much for the opportunity of giving you the tzedakah, or you say, I bless you so much, thank you, I'm so grateful that you were able to ask me, that I'm able to give you, whatever it is. If you can look at him in the eye and show him that respect and gratify him as a human being and make him feel seen and make him feel human and say, would you like to come in for a drink? Or just saying here, someone give it to him and then close the door on his face, it's double, it's worth double the value, because, someone once mentioned that in the 5 languages of love, we learn now that as a college teacher as well, it's very important to stress the 5 types of receiving love. But one of the things that's even greater, that I forget who taught this, was, she said it was Tal Shachar. She told me that there's that it's not so much about, even more than the 5 languages of love, it's how they're given. Because there could be the same gift that's just given, here, my mom made me give this to you from a little kid, or a much worse gift that's given with so much love and so much seeing you and individuating, what you need and what you're receiving are. The way you could give love, the way you give a compliment, the way you give what the 5 love languages is much more valuable than the actual thing that's being given or transmitted as well. So that is really now the bridge to the next concept of Ki Tavo. How much time do we have? 11:19. Okay, we'll do one more concept. So we'll get to that in one moment. So I'm just going to summarize. We have the relationship with our spouses, the relationship with giving, doing an act of kindness of any mitzvah. It's being able to do it 100%. It doubles the mitzvah, being in Eretz Yisrael fully, and being in our relationship with Hashem, right? Not just doing it, but actually being in it. I'm in this relationship, right? It matters to me. It's something that I think about. It's something that I'm taking an account of. And that's what Elul is about. And now the Rebbe says this is all actually connected to why Ki Tavo, entering the land 100% fully, is a prerequisite for Bikurim. That you can't actually, because these two things, being involved and being present, is a prerequisite for gratitude. Because you only truly, you could really appreciate something only if you're fully involved. The more you come to be present with somebody, the more you appreciate them. And sometimes you think well, there's nothing to appreciate, right? They're just don't like this person. But if you would actually be so much more present with that person, suddenly you would appreciate them so much more. So Bikurim is about being grateful to Hashem for all the good He gave you. But you can't actually be grateful if you're busy conquering the land, if all of your Jewish people, all of the nation hasn't fully settled in. If your mind is somewhere else, you're not going to be able to truly be grateful. And these mitzvahs are actually only Bikurim is about a heart feeling. It's not just about taking the fruit and being here, I did it. It's not about a checklist, because Elul is our time to remember that our relationship with Hashem shouldn't be a checklist. It should be something in our heart, something that comes from a feeling, from an emotion. It should be done with our entire heart. In fact, in this week's Parsha, we have a pasuk that in Perek 28, Chaf Ches, pasuk Mem Zayin, I think, or Mem Zayin. 47, we have a pasuk that says Tachas asher lo avadat Hashem Elokecha b'simcha v'tuv leivav. And what it actually means literally is that because you didn't serve Hashem when times were good, when you had everything, when your life was good, then Hashem will take and you didn't thank Hashem and you didn't do the mitzvahs, now Hashem will take it all away from you because you didn't serve Hashem when you had it. But the Rizal says that actually all of the mitzvahs, that you did the mitzvahs, but you didn't do it b'simcha v'tuv leivav, that you did them I have to do this because the community I'm in makes me do it, because I'm otherwise Hashem will punish me and give me a bad year. even though you did the mitzvah, so you didn't do it with simcha v'tuv levav, every mitzvah needs to be done with simcha. Because imagine a relationship where, like, after, like, where the spouse is just doing everything because they have to, because they don't want to be punished by their spouse. That relationship doesn't have a very long shelf life, because a relationship where the person's only doing it because they have to or because it's whatever, that's not a real relationship. A real relationship is when you're so overjoyed, when you're present and you say, wow, how lucky am I to be able to, make dinner or to go out with this person I love, not because, I have to, it's date night, right? No one would feel good in that relationship. So Hashem says that even if you did the mitzvahs, if you're just doing it because, I have to, that's not a real relationship, right? Like, there's no, I'm out of here, right? I don't want to be in that relationship, and you shouldn't be. No one should be. And so I think restarting this, like, reset, this Elul is a time to reset that, I was digressing here, but to know that the mitzvahs are not just about doing them, but it's about doing it with simcha. Simcha comes from gratitude, right? I'm so happy to do this because, so it's like a chain. You want to do as mitzvahs with joy, and that comes from being grateful. When you're grateful to something, just to have you in my life, I'm grateful to my Hashem for my children. I'm changing your diaper with simcha. Like, it's that mindset for real. And it really is a mindset. When I'm so grateful just to have my kids, when I'm in that mindset, I'm happy to do everything, right? They're my child. I'm so happy I have the opportunity. When you have this moment awakening, like, wow, if I even have a child, the fact that I changed a diaper, cleaned their whatever, I'm so grateful I even have this opportunity. Not everyone has this opportunity, right? So I'm making dinner for my husband. How lucky am I to have? I'm doing it with joy when I'm like, how lucky I am to have a loving husband, right? And so, and being grateful comes from being present. So really, simcha, which is like the ultimate goal, that we're happy to be in this relationship with Hashem, that we're doing the mitzvahs and we're feeling blessed, like a Baal Tshuva, right? Like, I'm so lucky to keep Shabbos. I'm so, like, a fresh Baal Tshuva comes from gratitude, which comes from being 100% present. So being Ki Tavo really is like the first step. It's only when you can be 100% in it. And the Rebbe says in this like tzicha, that even though we have so many layers of distraction, we're able to pull back and peel back the layers one at a time until we go very deep, and we're able to compartmentalize, right? We're able to, only humans have this ability to compartmentalize, put aside all of the different things and say, I'll put that away for later, I'll deal with that later, I'll deal with it later. Right now I'm here, I'm 100%. And actually, in this, again, one more tangent, is that in this, once someone asked the fifth Chabad Rebbe, what is a chassid? One of the answers was a lamplighter, but in this case, he said, what is a chassid? And he said a chassid is a pnimi, right? That was something that I think the sixth Rebbe, a pnimi, which means a pnimi is somebody who's pnimiut, who's present, and he translated as present. That pnimius means that you're an inner person, and inner means, because I was always like, wait, what do you mean? What does depth have to do with being present? Because the deeper you go, the more layers you remove, the more present you can be. So pnimius means like going back, peeling aside more and more layers until you can be 100% in your core and in your essence, and be there 100% in your essence. And so he said that a chassid is a pnimi, and the famous example is like that the previous Rebbe was like about to go on a very dangerous mission, so like cross the border, we could have been thrown in jail, and it was like 5 minutes before leaving, and he was like fully involved in like reading something, and his son-in-law said, how do you do it, right? How do you do it? Like, you're not worried about the future. And I forget what his answer. If anyone remembers, Jorah, he said, I forget what he said. He said, like, if you could truly be a pnimi, like right now, I'm able to take each pocket of time as, I don't remember what his answer was, but it was basic. The idea was that right now, I don't have to worry about what's happening later or what happened earlier. I can peel back all those layers, move them aside, compartmentalize, and be a pnimi. And that's what a chassid is. He said, a chassid is whatever he's doing with his entire being. He's fully there. He's there. He's talking to you. Right, there was another example of a tzaddik in Eretz Yisrael.
Like about to go on a trip.
Exactly. There's another person who was a doctor in Israel who was extremely successful. He was a doctor. He was he was an author. He was a Rosh Yeshiva, and he made time for his walks. And they asked him how he had time for so many things, and he said, because whatever I'm doing, I'm only doing that thing. He was writing books. When you could do, and you think like it's the opposite. I'm too busy to be here 100% present with you because I have so many other things going on. I'm too busy, but it's the opposite. You have much more time for things when you're doing what you're doing 100%. Then I don't know how it works because I don't do it. But we do see it that way, that when you could do what you need to do 100%, then you carve that time, because your time is so much more effective. The time you spend, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. The quality ends up being exponentially more, and you end up doing it and accomplishing what you said to do, because when you're doing it, you're doing that thing. So anyways, that was a digression of what is a chassid. A chassid is a pnimi, and we aim to be Ki Tavo, to say when I'm there all the way. Not just my body is there, my mind is there, my heart is there, my soul is there. I'm a pnimi, I'm peeling back all the layers. That's what you made that visual. It's gorgeous. Here, I'll put it on camera. It's gorgeous. So Jorah, our artist, drew this visualization of Ki Tavo. So this is really a visualization of just being present, entering somewhere 100%, and that can allow us to do Bikurim. And only once we've done that can we now bring Bikurim fully. We can now be grateful. And we see that the more time we spend with our children, the more we can appreciate them. The more time we spend with our students, then the more we're present, not time, it's not about time. The more present we are with our child, 100%, we start to see things in them and appreciate things about them we didn't know. The more present we are with our spouse, listening and moving ourselves aside completely to be a full vessel to really appreciate them, the more we can appreciate them and be grateful for them and be overjoyed to be in a relationship with them. And with Elul and with our children, with our spouses, with our friends, with our Bikurim, and with Hashem as well, the more we can have the space in Elul to be 100% Ki Tavo, to enter that space 100%, the more we can appreciate that we're like with Hashem and we're just take away everything else. We're like, wow, when you can see the goodness, and we could just, when you're taking a walk, even when you're doing anything in the world and you're only doing that, you just come to have a much deeper appreciation for Hashem. If you take a walk and you're able to just think about what you're doing, I mean, this is a challenge that you just take a 1 minute a day of any mundane thing and do only that thing. If it's washing dishes, if it's taking a walk and doing nothing else and focusing only on the exact sensation of what you're doing, right? You're walking and you're noticing the feet, your sleeves, whatever it is, you're just bringing your attention back to the exact thing that you're doing. Even if it's washing dishes, you come to have such a deeper appreciation for life, for what Hashem created. If you're eating and you're just focusing on the taste, the texture, the chewing, the involvement, even if it's breathing, right? We all know that breathing is, I mean, at least in therapy now, we all understand that, like, just breathing for 1 minute and just focusing on the sensations of the breath in your throat, in your belly, and the temperature of it, it can bring you so much joy because it makes you present. So doing anything for 1 minute a day, it elevates your level of joy, of mental health, of everything so much more. And it's a muscle that we exercise. So if we start with a timer, I actually did this for a while. It was a timer on my phone. It went off at the same time every day. Whatever I'm doing for 60 seconds, I have to just 100% focus on that thing, which is very hard for me. I have severe ADHD. It's a muscle. So then you're just like, oh, I'm driving, so I'm 100% focused on the steering wheel, on the pedal, on the feet, on what I'm looking at on the street in front of me, on noticing the sky, on just the driving experience and nothing else, right? On whatever I'm doing in that moment, it can exercise that muscle and allow us to have exponential gratitude. And it also deepens our relationship with Hashem, because we start to say, like, wow, I'm eating the flavors Hashem created, right? The colors and the textures, the world Hashem made. It's so beautiful. It's so vast. I have so much love for Hashem. So that presence gives us that gratitude, which brings us that simcha, and that love, that joy. So hopefully it left us with something, or more than one thing that we can take with us for this month, this week. L'chaim, thank you so much for joining me. I give everyone brachos to be able to have the ability to be present and to enjoy every moment of our lives. To even have a few moments of presence, to have present relationships, to have a present relationship with Hashem, and to be our best selves. L'chaim, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
If you'd like to, I was told by our last person, if you'd like to sponsor a class, if you don't live here, you do live here, you watch live, you can email chabadabefrat@gmail.com. You can even make a donation on our website, chabadabefrat.com, and specify that you want to dedicate a shiur to somebody's birthday, yortzai, refuah shalema, or just because you love the class. It would mean so much. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna